Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Never Seen It. This is a podcast about movies that we haven't seen yet. I'm your host this week. My name is Betsy, and with me is Trent.
Hey, Betsy.
Trent, we are continuing on episode 3 of 4 for Big Movie May 1970s edition, going back finally from 1976, just a few years, to 1973, where we are going to be watching a movie that I have seen all of one time and you have never seen. We are watching The Sting. And I am hosting, obviously, because as I just said, I have seen this movie one time. So, Trent, what do you know about The Sting?
So The Sting as a movie for me, I know I've known the name, but without looking into it, without watching a trailer, without knowing who's in it, I have no idea what it was. And of course, this intro would have been about a minute long because up until I just watched a trailer before we hit record, I had no idea. But now I know The Sting won a whole lot of Oscars, including Best Picture for 1973. So based on that cursory look at the trailer, it seems like this is a period piece based in Chicago in the 1930s, and these guys are a couple of scam artists or con artists or just guys out there who are trying to pull jobs and trying to get away with it, I guess. I don't really know other than what I just saw.
It's basically mobsters and con men. And Scott Joplin music.
Sure. It also kind of looks like a comedy of sorts because there's a lot of more slapstick kind of humor in here that I'm not really used to, especially with these two guys, because of course it's Paul Newman and Robert Redford. Two guys, I mean, I have seen, I don't know, like 2 or 3 Robert Redford movies and only one Paul Newman movie up to this point. So I'm kind of excited. And you also mentioned that in the marketing for this movie, they were mentioning, hey, this is these two guys' next adventure because they were in Butch Cassidy.
Right. So this is that thing in the 60s and 70s where there are certain duos, certain groups of actors that get put together. So if you were in the comedy world, it was probably Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon that you were following.
Sure. And they've continued that on with like Robert De Niro and Al Pacino doing their stuff. It's an old Hollywood thing that people still seem to glom onto.
Yeah, and it's not unusual to have people make multiple movies together, especially if it really works and the movie's really successful.
Yeah, if they have really good chemistry.
We're still seeing it today with like Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling. Those people have made multiple movies together.
Different kind of chemistry, but yes.
But in the 1960s, you had Paul Newman, who was this heartthrob and also an Academy Award nominated actor. And then you get into the late 60s, early 70s, and Robert Redford shows up.
Yep.
Same thing, heartthrob, beautiful, beautiful men. They're both very talented, and they made Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which was a huge success. So this is the movie they made to follow that up. They paired up again. I don't remember if they did it after this, though. They maybe had one more, but in my head, these two have made so many movies together, even if it's just these two.
And I don't really know how old Paul Newman was at this point.
He's a little older than Robert Redford.
Only a little?
I don't think he's like way, way older, but in this movie,
Within
I
10
think
years,
he's
maybe?
playing like a lot older. Like the age gap is bigger.
Okay. Similar to when we watched The Hustler for our Wayback Machine episode over on Patreon, where he was paired up with an older guy as his coach. And I would suspect in this movie, Paul Newman is the older guy and is trying to rein in the wild child, Robert Redford.
Well, especially when we're talking about con men, there's usually somebody teaching the younger guy the ropes.
Yeah, and we've done a couple of these movies like this in the past where I think last year we did Matchstick Men. It was a similar thing there where the oldest con man ended up getting conned by the younger con man. It's not really a spoiler, but whatever. But yeah, I'm kind of excited for this one. I like watching old movies. It's even weirder when it's a period piece and the movie itself is 50 years old.
So yes, they made the movie in 1973, but it's set in like the 1920s or 30s.
I think they said it was in the 30s, yeah. But still, like this is Depression era Chicago. A lot of desperate people out there. And yeah, when we're covering 1970s movies, I feel like the people who are making these movies and on screen, they've been alive long enough to remember what it was like way back in the 30s, like maybe when they were kids or very young adults. They maybe remember struggling back then or their family was struggling back then. And hey, it's the 1970s and things aren't very good right now in the country. So they're kind of going through a similar thing.
They also remember like the bank robbers and the gangsters that were
Absolutely.
really in the pop culture at that time.
Yeah, and that's not even a thing anymore. Like, what's the last bank robbery you actually heard about? Like, honest to God, somebody came in with a Tommy gun and with a sack with a dollar sign on it. that whole thing.
I don't think that really happens much anymore, but by golly, would I love to hear someone actually try some nonsense like that. But like you've not seen this movie. I've only seen this once. It was like 20 years ago. I almost don't remember this. So we're just going to go do it. We're going to watch The Sting, and we will be right back. And we are back from watching The Sting, and we'll have the entertainer in our head for the next 3 days.
Yes.
Trent, what did you think of the Best Picture winner from 1973?
Oh, so I don't know if it's because I've seen so many movies that are heist movies of a different stripe, but it's hard for me to really look at this movie and say it's one of the greatest movies of all time. Maybe even not even deserving of a Best Picture, but I don't really know the context of 1973 cinema. But watching it here right now in 2025, it was fine. I wasn't blown away. I think the acting of these two guys and everybody in the movie is really top notch. But honestly, I was falling asleep.
I feel like you were into it at the beginning, but then as the movie
Yeah.
kind of wore on, it was losing some steam
It
with
was
you.
too much setup and not enough execution because really, there's only two cons. The first one being them on the train with the poker game in the background. That was great. I really enjoyed that. And then the big score, it's too much of him trying to get the trust of Robert Redford. And then they also throw in this extra wrinkle in the whole thing about trying to get this detective off their back. So they create this other group of people who are also in on the whole scheme. And maybe it was just a little bit too convoluted for me to really care. I knew they were going to get away with it in the very end.
Is it just that thing where you've seen enough con movies to just assume at this point that everybody is in on it?
Yes, because you have so many people in that room, and as soon as they introduced the FBI people and they went to that cop in the diner, my immediate assumption was, oh yeah, they're in on it.
Yeah, you said, who are these guys? And I said, they're the FBI. But I suspected that you suspected something else.
Yeah, and the only other wrinkle in this was the guy who was shooting everybody. He's the guy who shot the woman. He's the guy who shot the guy who was chasing after Robert Redford, which I'm even questioning who the hell that guy was and if he actually killed people.
So the guy who was following Robert Redford around and kind of protecting him is not the person who shot that dude in the alley. The person who shot the dude in the alley was that waitress at the diner.
Oh,
they used her name.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so basically he said, go open the bathroom door. I'm going to hide in the bathroom. But when he left, she followed and took care of the other guy because he failed on his job.
Okay.
And they only sort of explained that at the end. When it's revealed there's somebody else kind of protecting him, that guy says, oh, she works with Lonigan and she was sent to kill you. And this is her name and she's real business. That's the name that the guy in the alley said. So they don't explain it very quickly. It sort of just happens and we move on. And this is all amongst the sea of other cons that you're trying to keep straight.
Yeah, and there's not really anything about this movie that is bad. I think the pacing is a little off here. Like I said, I was literally falling asleep on the couch, and it's maybe because we had a late lunch and I had a lot of food in my belly, and it's a Sunday afternoon when we're watching this, so maybe that's part of it. But still, you didn't really keep my attention because, again, I know everything. Just get on with it, get on with it, get on with it. But then finally, the final encounter here with Lonigan is, again, just a couple of minutes. He gets the name from the phone call, which I did notice that he said it a little bit different.
Oh, the guy calls him, gives him the name of the horse.
Place it on this horse instead of saying exactly what to do.
Oh, this horse
in this race
yeah.
to win. Because you have to say win, runner-up, or show, or whatever the hell it is. So I knew that was part of it. Obviously, the entirety of what's going on in that building is all a part of the scam. So I figured that's maybe what they were going to do. They were just going to trip him up a little bit, and then, yeah, that's how he loses his money. And hell, that's a lot of money for 1936, I think this was.
1936, $500,000.
Woof.
During a depression.
Woof. Yeah. And that, honestly, that right there, how much does that distribution of money help that entire neighborhood of people?
Yeah, everybody has a part to play, and their shares are not equal. They all get little bits. Like you get a cut, you get a cut, depending on what your role is, what your job was. And then at the end of the movie, Robert Redford is like, nah, I was in it for the revenge, basically.
Yeah.
And it feels great to take this guy, so don't even give me the money. I'll just lose it anyway.
And they're going to give him money later. He's just got to be more responsible with it, I suppose. Because, of course, you know, they're going off into the sunset, and these guys are going to continue to run jobs, and his partner is going to take care of him in that, hey, I know that you might be, I don't know if you want to call him a youngster, but you're younger than I am. So that's why I hired this other guy to keep an eye on you, because you get yourself into trouble. So maybe he's just going to take him more under his wing and, okay, here you go, kid. Here's some money to get you by. Don't blow it at the fucking track, or don't blow it on craps or whatever.
My interpretation of the end of this movie is this whole thing is a one and done. Robert Redford's character is out to get the guy who killed his former partner.
Right.
And it's all just sort of a big misunderstanding. He has no idea that the small-time job that they pull is actually Lonigan. They don't know that it has anything to do with him. It's kind of an accident.
Yeah, because they intercept this courier who's just taken some cash to bring up to quote-unquote corporate in Chicago. Like the end of days earnings for, you know, a Tuesday. They take it up to Chicago and put it in the bank just to make sure that it gets in there before the end of business or whatever.
But Lonigan takes this very personally, and he sends his goons to kill the other guy. And he would kill Hooker, too, if he knew where he was and what he looked like and anything like that.
Sure.
So the whole movie is just him getting back at this dude for killing his partner. And then the Paul Newman character is clearly an old-timer who doesn't really do this anymore. He works at a brothel and a bar and
a carnival.
A carnival.
I have never seen in my life an indoor carousel. And honestly, I wanted to know what else was in that building, but because this carousel is so huge in that room, you can't really see anywhere else. Then again, you go upstairs and like you said, it's a fucking brothel. They don't really come out and say it, but there's ladies hanging around there. They talk about where are the rooms. So clearly there's something going on there.
But he seems to be living this very comfortable life as just like a mechanic and a drunk. He's just hanging out. He's not pulling con jobs anymore because he's in it for the big con. He doesn't do the small time shit that Robert Redford does.
Yeah, he also got popped a while back by the feds because he was trying to scam a United States senator off of some stock scheme, I guess. They didn't really go into the details of it, but that's really why.
So he got out of the game, basically.
Yeah.
One last job,
He got too close. Yeah, hashtag one last job. That's exactly what this was. Maybe.
That
I
is
don't know.
what this movie is one last job. One for the old timer who doesn't do this anymore and wants to prove he still got it. And one for the young guy who wants to get some of his back.
But then again, also, Paul Newman says, you know, kid, even if we pull this off, you're always going to say it's not enough.
Because why would you? If you're really good at this and it's fun and you don't get caught, you get away with it, of course you're going to want to do it again. But at the end of the movie, Paul Newman is like walking around with his suitcase and he turns around and gives one last look to that indoor carousel like he's never going to see it again.
I suppose because he's never really going to need to work again.
No, and Lonigan thinks these two guys are dead. He thinks they're dead. The whole thing they set up at the beginning is, we can take this guy, but he can never know it was us.
Right.
He has to believe what we tell him, what we set up here.
And he can never see our faces again. And the people who work for him can never see our faces again. So we need to be dead.
So we need to piss off to God knows where in the world and never let him see our faces. So my assumption is they do this job, they go overseas or whatever. They go somewhere that they are not going to be spotted.
Yeah, it's also the 1930s, and it was a lot easier to disappear in those days.
Yes, it was. It was also a lot easier to pull a job like this. And I had to kind of look to see what they were talking about. So their whole scam is The Wire. Have you ever run a wire?
Yeah.
And they say some comment like, well, nobody even does that anymore because it's not been updated and it's like a scam. But even within the inner circle, people really didn't know that. The guys who love to pull this scam, they barely know that this isn't a thing people do anymore.
Yeah, Paul Newman even says near the end of the movie that there's only like 4 people in the world that would know how to pull this thing.
And it's basically off-track betting. I had to look this up so I understood it. It was horse racing, and they just had this little bar, this little place where they can go and place bets on all of the races. But the scam is there's a delay. So they have real races coming in, but they delay the message by a couple of minutes so that they can place the bet on the horse that they know already won.
Yeah, and it's coming through on ticker tape, which is the really, really old way of reporting like stock. Like when you talk about a stock ticker, that's exactly what that is. The prices of each stock coming through the electronic ticker tape is getting printed on this paper, and it's just coming out ever so slowly throughout the entire day, which is why those reels are so huge.
And that guy has to sit there going, I don't know which horse to pick because there's so much information here.
It's all coming in all at once, and you have to say, okay, this guy, we only need to have him as like a 4-to-1 favorite because we don't need to be fucking putting our entire fortune on the line here. So I do like the fact that they use a scam that is not really something that a lot of people would understand. I mean, I understand horse racing. I understand how the stock ticker thing works. So that makes sense that, yes, if you have access to information, and these days, this is not a thing because of how quick information is out there, which is why, I mean, just to put it into modern day, talking about the stock market, literally, companies will incorporate and actually build their buildings closer, physically closer to the stock market and where their computers are set up with all of their custom algorithms and everything. They physically put them closer to the New York Stock Exchange because the speed of light is actually what is preventing them from being first in a stock trade. If your computer system is located in Omaha, Nebraska, if your place is in New Jersey, your request for a stock trade will get there sooner than somebody in Omaha. It's a really weird way to explain it, but it's true.
And in the modern parlance, that's about the closest you can get because everything is so instantaneous that this con is non-existent anymore, as you said.
Yeah, you literally cannot do it anymore.
You literally can't because there's people live streaming it and live tweeting it and live posting, and they are just like, everything that is happening right now, the most delay you're going to get is like a few seconds. There's nothing to delay it minutes at a time.
No.
But even in 1973, I feel like this scam was so beyond because we had computers in 1973. So yes, they were, smarter than the ticker tape, but not as smart as the computers we have now.
Yeah, you had computers, but you don't have the internet. You don't have the way of communicating at light speed. At least if you're not on a telephone system, which that's really the only way to get information back in those days, other than, I guess, fax.
And long distance wasn't really a thing. So when we're talking about, the Belmont Stakes, which is, where is Belmont? I don't even know all these racing places.
I don't know. We are not gamblers in this house, Betsy. I don't know why you think I would know that information.
We also don't really care about horse racing.
No, I don't give a shit about gambling or of any kind.
But you get it. Like, they're in Belmont, wherever the fuck that is, and then these guys are in Chicago reading information off of a tape.
Yeah.
It is a complicated scam with a lot of moving parts, and the con has multiple layers. But as far as, like, the movie goes, I get why you're saying you don't care, because we're so many years removed from any of this being understood.
Yeah, and I think the thing that maybe put a glaze over my eyes was there's a lot of words and terms that they're talking about here completely going over my head. Most of them are used in these communities where the con artists will they talk about a mark. Well, a mark is a person that you're going after. That is something that has transcended the world of con artists and whatnot. But there's even a whole lot of stuff about the gambling world that I didn't understand either, mainly just the terms, and I just let it go because I feel like they were putting a lot of that stuff in there just for authenticity's sake. So when the people who actually know what they're talking about hear that, they can say, okay, I understand that.
But the schmucks on the street go, I don't know.
I don't know. I'm here to see the handsome man on the screen.
I mean, I was here for that. But we can talk more about that in just a minute after we take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. What's the matter, Billy? You look bored just sitting there clicking that pen.
Well, Becky, I've already listened to this week's episode of Never Seen It, and there's nothing left for me to do. Guess I'll just sit here and click this pen until next Sunday.
Wait, Billy, what if I told you that the Never Seen It crew puts out 4 other shows every month?
4 shows? How do I get those?
It's easy. Just go to patreon.com/neverseenitpod, and for $5 per month, you get access to all their extra content.
Wow, that sounds a whole lot better than clicking this pen.
It sure does, Billy. It sure does. So obviously the biggest draw of this movie is its 2 leads with Robert Redford and Paul Newman. And I did look it up because I was curious. They are 11 years apart in age.
Okay,
and
that's about right.
You can kind of see here when I said, well, they sort of age Paul Newman up. They definitely are painting him as, I've been in this business a while. I'm a lot older than this young whippersnapper who's coming for my guidance.
Sure, and Robert Redford here is again... it's something that we kind of covered last time with Dustin Hoffman being almost 40 years old when he made that movie, but he's in college, and I know we talked about that in the episode. But it's just this era of cinema where it doesn't matter how old the actor looks. Hollywood just wasn't casting people for their appropriate ages. They were casting people for the star power.
Right, because
more than anything else.
According to the script, the Robert Redford character is supposed to be about 19 years old.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I am not fucking kidding
oh my
you.
God.
And he is clearly a man who is in his 30s.
Seriously, in the movie, they say, I'm going to send the boy after you to collect my money.
The boy, the kid, the young man, because I'm the old man and he's the young up-and-comer.
Robert Redford in this movie has more wrinkles than I do, for fuck's sake. I am 40.
He is almost as old as we are recording this when he made this movie.
And I have to get past that just because I know it is the era. I know they're casting for star power and not for accuracy. I get it. Doesn't mean I like it, though, because it really doesn't fit.
Would it have made you happier or more interested in the movie if he really was a very young man with this older guy?
I feel like the dynamic, especially when he's like piling into the car with Lonigan, it would make more sense of him being this skinny little shit next to these 2 big mobsters. But instead it's Robert Redford and you're just looking at him.
Yes, and I am looking at him. He's a very handsome man.
Sure.
And Paul Newman. Like, when you say people are coming here to look at the handsome men, yes, exactly. That is why this is probably amongst the Best Picture nominees and then also went on to win.
Well, speaking of Oscars, Betsy, I think you need to tell the story about what Edith Head said when she won her Oscar for costuming this movie.
Yes, I have talked about Edith Head a number of times in various formats for our podcast and for other people's podcasts.
Yep.
She was an absolute goddamn pioneer in costuming, and she was nominated. First of all, she was one of the people that really pushed to get costumes as an award at the Academy Awards.
She campaigned to get Best Costuming as a category for the Oscars, which is really, really hard to do.
To get them to add a category, yeah.
Absolutely.
So she was a champion of that. She was also just a fucking badass because she got nominated after that like 31 times or some insane number.
Yeah.
And she did the costumes for The Sting. and it was her 8th and final win for Best Costume Design. And during her speech, she said, "Just imagine dressing the 2 handsomest men in the world and then getting this." Like, she had the best job. She got to put these 2 guys in these impeccably tailored tuxedos and suits, and they look so good every second of this movie. Even at the beginning, where Robert Redford is dressed kind of like a street bum. He is dirty and wearing raggedy clothes, and he still looks amazing.
When he got that fucking like maroon suit, I don't even know what the hell the color was.
That pinstripe number from the beginning.
That pinstripe thing. Betsy, that suit was so distracting to whatever else was on the screen. Not because it was bad or whatever, because, hey, I don't know of 1930s fashion, but he honestly looked like he was out of a Dick Tracy comic book.
It's the thing of, I am a dumb young kid and I suddenly find myself with money and I'm going to go buy the flashiest suit I can.
Which is exactly why it doesn't work with his age.
Right. It doesn't make any sense and he looks ridiculous in it. He still looks good for you and me.
Sure.
But in the context of his character in the movie, he looks ridiculous.
He does. And honestly, I don't even think it fits him all that well just because, I mean, Robert Redford is kind of a gangly guy. He is tall. He has broad shoulders, and he didn't fit for me in that character and in that suit.
He's wearing a little bit of a zoot suit almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I got nothing bad to say about Robert Redford, the man, the actor, or whatever. I just think, as you've said before about a lot of other movies, that they had the opportunity to get the band back together, get this duo back together, and they had the opportunity and they took it. And obviously, it worked out. This movie won 7 Oscars as a result. So I can't say anything bad about it. I just don't think it's for me.
Well, continuing that conversation, this is the only time in his very, very long career that Robert Redford got nominated for an Academy Award specifically for acting.
Yeah.
He has been nominated and won for directing. He won for a movie in the 80s, and then he got nominated again in the 90s. And he got nominated for Best Picture. So the man has been recognized by the Academy, but not really for acting.
No.
This is the only one.
And the guy, of course, is still alive. He will turn 89 in August.
And he is also the guy responsible for, if you can believe it, the Sundance Film Festival trend. You know where that name comes from?
I get it. That I did know. I've never seen the movie, but I know that reference.
Another movie you haven't watched, also starring Paul Newman. So let's talk about Paul Newman. So he is definitely in an interesting turn of events, more the supporting character in this movie. I would say while they are kind of equally billed, his character has slightly less to do.
There are different sections of the movie here because the first section, when they're pulling the train job, that's the Paul Newman section. Then it's setting up all the dominoes to let Robert Redford take over and then get the mark into their crosshairs, as it were. So they both kind of have equal importance in the main job. Obviously, Robert Redford is in the entirety of the movie, yes, but it's not until he meets Paul Newman that the big job can actually get going. Because he needs him. He doesn't know how to pull a big job like this. He doesn't have all the contacts.
He's never pulled a big con. He's only done small-time grifts. And now he's just like, I have a vendetta. I want this guy specifically to pay for what he has done to us.
Sure. And I really like the section here where they say, okay, let's get all these guys out from their day jobs. Let's do the little nose thing to everybody to say, hey, I got a job for you. Come out and meet me. And they set up this big meeting at the whorehouse where they decide, okay, the only way that you're going to get his attention is through poker. That is his only vice. He doesn't chase women. He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't do drugs. He doesn't do anything except poker. And with a guy like this, he wants to win. And he cheats. That's the other thing that they say. So how do you cheat a cheater? You cheat.
You have to cheat, but do it better.
You have to cheat better than he does, but you also have to keep everybody in that room so that you can't just say, hey, you cheated me, and it's just one-on-one.
And this is arguably the best scene in the entire movie because Paul Newman gets to come in there, and he is so fucking charming and funny. He
Yes.
kicks the door open, stumbles in like he's been drinking. He's not wearing a tie.
Saying, sorry, I'm late. I was taking a crap.
What an introduction, right?
Yes.
Like, we
Yes.
haven't seen his character do what he does best at this point, other than demonstrating that he's good with cards.
Sure.
And there is a shot where you see hands up close doing these tricks with cards. Like, here's the ace on top, shuffle the deck, the ace
Yeah.
is still on top. And then this seamless pan up happens to his face. And you know that is not Paul Newman's hands.
course.
But I was so impressed with that invisible cut that they managed to do in that section.
I wonder if the filmmakers here wanted to allude back to The Hustler, because in that movie, Paul Newman and Jackie Gleason kind of both did their own pool stunts, except for like one or two where an expert took over and did the really complicated stuff.
A couple of trick shots.
Yeah, so maybe that's an homage to that stuff. But the difference between this movie and that movie is that The Hustler is fucking skill. And this one is just, hey, it's sleight of hand, which is skill, but still.
But when he goes in there and we're setting up this scene, it's basically them introducing themselves to their mark and getting him on the hook. Like, we
Yeah.
need him to be angry with us. We need to find an in to get him in on the scam, where he thinks he is scamming the other guy.
Yeah, and one of the things that he points out kind of after the fact, Paul Newman says to Robert Redford, you know, yeah, he threatened to kill you, but that just means that we're getting where we want to be. Like, you're not actually going to be successful until this guy is completely desperate to stick it to us.
He has to want it badly, and that's when we know we've got him.
Yeah, the desperation is just reeking off of him. And of course, this guy's got not much to lose because, hey, this is a little poker game. It's a pride thing more than anything to say, hey, I fucked over this other guy.
And he doesn't actually cheat until the very last hand, I think.
And like, he is losing a lot.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
And then he gets angry and says, I want to take this guy to the cleaners. And the way that they edit it together, where we can see Paul Newman has 4 threes in his hand, and then he lays 4 jacks out on the
How
table.
the fuck did that happen?
Because he's very good at cheating.
Yeah, he's better at cheating, yeah.
So this whole sequence where we let Paul Newman front the movie, I think that's the best stuff. And then at a certain point, we start teetering more into, okay, we're getting a little more complicated. We have to have this extra layer of the FBI. But you and I, watching a lot of con movies, figured that the FBI guys were also part of the con. And then at the end, it's just like, bang, bang. Oh, get out of here. Get out of here. But what about my money? No, get out of here. There's 2 dead bodies. And then 30 seconds later, everyone off the floor. Everyone's alive.
Everybody
Everything's
gets to
fine.
walk off into the sunset and movie over.
And if you were to make this movie today, it would probably be mostly the same, but maybe just a little more elegantly done. You know, you and I loved Ocean's 11. Like, you hadn't seen Ocean's 11 until we did it for this podcast. And if you recall way back, because that was one of the very first episodes we did,
Yes, it was.
they're showing you all of these things. And then at the end of the movie, they tell you what was really going on. And it is
Sure.
complicated. There are a lot of cons that they are running simultaneously, but it is so smartly and seamlessly done that it's really entertaining and keeps your attention. And then they do like a big reveal at the end.
Sure. I like those con movies a lot better where the audience is completely in the dark. You don't know what is going on here. And I didn't. I did not get it until the very, very end. But then you also have other movies like The Italian Job, where that movie, hey, it's a personal vendetta as well. And you also have all of these very weird characters that you're throwing in there, these archetypes. You got the suave guy, you got the geek who is going to hack into shit, you got the explosives guy. And that movie is more akin to an Ocean's 11 type, whereas The Sting, I think, is in a category in and of itself because it's not even taking place in the 70s when the movie came out. It's from the 1930s. So that right there gives it a little bit more... It's harder for you to really grasp onto. Like, I never lived in the 30s. I don't know how you could get away with stuff like this. But I can see in Ocean's 11, I remember back in 2001 or whenever the hell that came out, I remember what the technology was back then, and I could surmise, okay, this is how you would do this, that, and the other. So yeah, I mean, I don't think we really need to keep on going that much farther here, but I kind of wanted to like this movie more because I like these characters, I like these actors, but because it got a little bit too convoluted and I'm like, okay, yes, obviously you're going to pull it off. How about you give me more excitement? How about you give me more questions? Or maybe even throw in some extra stuff here in the first part of the movie that you're going to pay off later. It's all kind of too convenient for me.
And because you're along with them as they're kind of executing the plan, you can't even feel fooled. You're like, well, I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And maybe in 1973, that wouldn't have been the case.
It was a novel thing back then, I'm sure.
I don't think there were a ton of these kinds of movies coming out in 73.
No.
This is much more a modern take.
Yeah, and I took a really quick glance at some old reviews of this movie, and a lot of them say, I mean, hey, these actors, top notch. These guys are charismatic as hell. They've got great chemistry on screen. They are great. And you really shouldn't analyze a movie like this all that much. You should be there for the ride. And we analyze movies too much for me to really enjoy it.
Okay, but let me counter that with this information. I told you I've seen this movie once. I watched this movie, I don't know if it was in high school or in college, but it was quite a few years ago. And I didn't love it. I don't think I hated it, but I definitely didn't like it enough to ever go back to it until today. It was something that I was kind of hoping I would watch now with fresh eyes and go, okay, I get it. I understand why this movie got nominated and won Best Picture.
Or maybe you're going to point out stuff that you maybe missed before and you're going to say, oh yeah, that's really clever. Or, hey, I didn't notice that the first time I watched it. And all these different things that you could just say because, hey, The Sting is kind of a big movie. Was there ever like a spiritual sequel to this movie ever? It would seem like there would be.
I think all of the spiritual sequels are the con movies that have come since it.
I suppose.
But yeah, what you were saying, I have seen so many more of these kinds of movies.
More and better.
That frankly do it better. We watched Matchstick Men, as you mentioned. We watched that last year. Is it a rewatchable movie for me? Not really. I feel like that's a one and done. And I went into that when we did the episode.
Yep.
But I think the immediate impact of watching it, I was like, okay, I see how this is good.
Yeah, it's exactly what I had. I think that movie you can watch exactly twice. Once to get it the first time, and the second one to say, oh, all these
Here's
clues
what
are
I
here.
missed.
Oh my God, I can't believe I missed that.
Meanwhile, The Sting, it's like, here it is.
Yeah.
The end.
There's no kind of mystery here to it whatsoever. There's nothing really clever about it.
What?
You know that these guys are pulling a con and it is going to be joined by all of these other people.
What I would argue the strength of the movie is how it is made. This is a stylistic movie through and through. The director intentionally is pulling from movies from the 1930s to do those swipes and wipes and iris zoom in at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
The way he's actually choosing to film it and frame it is very 1930s.
There's also a couple of moments here where, we talk about like the 1960s and 70s crash zoom, but those are zooms in. There's a couple here where it's zooming out. And it was a little bit disorienting.
It was also kind of shaky, like they couldn't do it very well, so they kind of sped it up to make it look right.
Yeah, they're zooming the camera lens out, but they're also moving the camera back itself physically.
Yeah, it didn't quite work. It was a little like, what happened there?
Yeah.
But it does look good. Overall, the movie
Absolutely.
really is well made. I like how they frame everything. Paul Newman looks suave as fuck in this movie. Robert Redford looks great. As I said, Edith Head, chef's kiss. Like, costumes are insane. Sets are insane. They do it on like an actual back lot on the Universal lot. They even go down to like the opening credits. The first thing you see is the 1930s Universal Pictures logo on the screen.
And then you transition to this really, really great opening sequence of all of the characters, all the actors getting their own little star moment there.
With a Norman Rockwell font and drawing saying the players. And you get like Paul Newman doing the little nose thing.
Yeah.
That was such
maybe
a great
one
intro.
of my favorite things about this movie is, of course, the style, the stylization of the 1930s type movies, but being made in the 70s, which is maybe, again, why the Academy liked the movie so much. It is hearkening back to a more classical type of filmmaking, but with modern actors.
Well, with that in mind, let me tell you some of the facts that I found about this movie and why we consider this a big movie for Big Movie May. So this movie was nominated for a total of 10 Academy Awards, and it won 7 of them. So it won Best Director, it won Best Picture, it won Costume, it won a lot of awards. They made this movie for $5.5 million. And at the time, $1 million of that was just the salaries for Robert Redford and Paul Newman. They each got $500,000, which was the most any actor had been paid up to this point. But the movie went on to become the 4th highest grossing film in history, right behind The Exorcist, which opened the same week.
Holy shit.
This movie...
I remember talking about that when we did the Exorcist movie because, hey, adjusted for inflation, yeah, these two movies made a fuckload of money.
This movie made $156 million,
Oh
which,
my God.
adjusted for inflation, is $723 million. When you make that adjustment, it would be the 19th highest grossing movie of all time. Now, this maybe has changed a little bit since this fact got entered, but it's still probably in the top like 25 or 50 movies ever made.
That's incredible.
This was also the first Universal Studios film to win the Best Picture Oscar since All Quiet on the Western Front in 1930. They had not won the Best Picture in over 40 years for that studio. This movie didn't make the cut for the 100 Greatest American Movies for the American Film Institute, but it was in the top 400 that got nominated. So it's definitely up there for these kinds of movies.
It was at least considered.
It was
to be, hey,
considered.
this is a good movie, but maybe not one of the best.
It is included amongst the 1001 movies you must see before you die. In 2005, the film was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry. The Writers Guild of America ranked it number 39 on its list of 101 greatest screenplays ever written. And as of right now, this movie has a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. But here's the one that I most want to talk to you about. This soundtrack features music by Scott Joplin, a ragtime performer of the 1930s. And they interpreted his music for the score via Marvin Hamlish, who is a very well-known composer and songwriter. And this soundtrack introduced an entire generation of people to Scott Joplin. It was number 1 on the Billboard charts.
The soundtrack was?
This soundtrack
Oh my
was
God.
number 1. My mother has this on vinyl. I remember seeing this in our home when I was a kid. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Because
Why would you listen to something like this?
you know, look, when you just pick that up, it's the cover of the movie, which is Norman Rockwell style art, The Sting, and it's all like ragtime jazzy music. Like, why?
It's like, how many times can you listen to The Entertainer?
But think about that. 1973.
Yeah, I think it's a generational thing because the people who are going to see The Sting are your and my parents.
But my parents weren't even 20 years old when this movie came out.
But still, it was a hot thing. And it's the music, it's the stylization from your parents' age, from their parents' age, I should say, when they were growing up in the 30s and 40s.
Okay, I will equate this to something from my own time. This is like, for me, when in the year 2000, the movie What Women Want came out, and the soundtrack was all like Frank Sinatra, and I was going through my, I'm gonna listen to Frank Sinatra phase at 15 years old. So I had that. It's kind of the same thing. Like, why am I listening to this as a 15-year-old? Because it was having a moment. There's not a lot more to it than that. Have I actually spent the rest of my life dedicating my listening to Frank Sinatra? No. Have the people in 1973 who bought the soundtrack for The Sting been completely changed and listened to Scott Joplin 50 plus years later? I very much doubt it.
It's very much a thing of its time. It's a time and place thing, of course, but did it have a lasting impact? Did this kind of music just infect all other movies? Of course not. But because the movie itself was such a huge hit, of course, yes, it's going to have a very short impact. And we've talked many times before about a lot of these 80s movies and early 90s movies that their soundtracks were just everywhere. And of course, we've already talked about all the other like 80s and 90s movies that we've covered, like Footloose and Dirty Dancing and shit like that. All of those movies, their soundtracks just infected the lexicon, and those songs that came out of those soundtracks, they survived because the movies were so big.
And it just kind of doesn't happen anymore. Like, really, we get
Not
songs.
to the same extent,
We get
no.
songs that get popular, but not soundtracks, not
No.
the complete album selling millions of copies. People don't consume music the same way anymore. So in 2025, you would be very, very hard pressed to get something like the Sting soundtrack to go big.
No, definitely
It's
not.
not going viral in 2025.
You know what? Stranger things have fucking happened in the world
True.
of music in the past 25 years, so hell. But all right, I think that's about where we need to stop this. I got nothing else to say about the Sting. For the 1970s, yes, I can fully see how this movie really stuck with people.
You can respect it existing.
Yeah.
It's just maybe not something you're going to come back to.
No, especially not a second time.
I'm glad I did, because I was curious after this many years if I was going to feel differently. I was kind of hoping I'd like it more. I will be interested as we go back and see other stuff from the 70s around this time, especially 1973. One of the other movies that got nominated, obviously, The Exorcist and American Graffiti. We have covered 3 movies that were
shit.
nominated for Best Picture this year. We got to go and see what the other 2 were.
And you know what though? Now that I've seen The Sting, I kind of don't like all these movies. I didn't like The Exorcist all that much. I didn't really like The Sting all that much. And American Graffiti was fucking boring. I didn't like it.
Not a movie for kids who were born in the 80s, certainly.
No. So I'll be really curious to see if we eventually cover the other 2 movies from 1973 that were nominated. I'm really curious what they are, for one thing.
I'm looking that up the second we stop recording this, because now I'm so curious.
Yeah. But just the fact that all 3 movies so far are, I don't know, maybe a little bit below average for me. Who knows?
But I would agree that maybe this is the best one of the 3. But that's another question to answer for another time. So if you would like to contribute your answer to that question, or what you thought of The Sting, or frankly any of these other movies that we are covering for the 1970s, we would love to hear from you. Send us an email, neverseenitpod@gmail.com.
Yeah, Betsy, we actually got an email from a new emailer. This one comes in from Anurag about the Tron Legacy episode we did just a few weeks ago.
I imagine that they found our podcast through our reel on Instagram. We mentioned it a few weeks ago, but it kind of blew up. All of the people who really love Daft Punk and Tron Legacy, that cross-section of people is apparently 500,000 strong at least, because that is where we are at the time of this recording, and it just keeps jumping up a couple of thousand every day.
It's insane. You people are just coming out of the woodwork, and we welcome you. Anyway, Anurag says, "Hey guys, was listening to your episode on Tron Legacy, and I have a fun fact. The person that did the design for Legacy, Bradley Monkowitz, aka G-Monk, also created the Windows 10 logo."
What?
I actually have heard the name G-Monk before in relation to the Windows crowd, because hey, I'm a fucking tech nerd sometimes too.
Yeah, you would know more about this than I would, certainly.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of cool. He says, near the end of your episode, you guys were talking about the Tron Ares trailer, and we were kind of speculating back and forth about, okay, what is this movie going to be about now that it's in the real world and blah, blah, blah. He says something people forget is that there are 2 grids. There is Flynn's grid, and then there is the original Dillinger grid from the original movie. My theory is that Tron Ares is based off of the Dillinger grid. The Dillinger grid could have evolved in a similar path as Flynn's grid, and that could lead to the similar looking light cycles and identity discs. The cycles look similar but not the same. It could also explain Jared Leto's character. That's just my theory anyway. Thoughts? I think that's a really good theory.
There's kind of a good grid and a bad grid.
Yeah, because in the original Tron movie, everything is taking place on the grid that the Dillinger kind of took over. So when Flynn took everything over after he got the IP rights for all of his games, maybe there's something still in the code somewhere where all of the Dillinger code is still there somehow. I don't know. It is a good theory, I think.
And this is also going to be, different filmmakers and different musicians included because it's going to be Nine Inch Nails instead of Daft Punk. There's going to be changes to this one. So they could take something from the original Tron and go in a different direction. We might pick up something from Tron Legacy. I don't know enough about the coding portion. I'm sure I'm sure now it's going to be when we watch Tron Ares, you're going to catch all the jokes that I just don't get.
And I think what this email is talking about is not necessarily a coding thing. It's just, hey, remember that when everybody was on the grid in the first movie, that was all based on Dillinger's code, and Flynn kind of changed it up for his own means. But then at the end of the movie, everything kind of blows up. So I don't know. We're just kind of speculating here, theorizing about what the new movie will be. And I know people out there have a lot of opinions about the Tron just pantheon of movies, and just the fact that there's only 2 movies, but there's also apparently a TV show that Disney did that was very popular with kids and adults alike.
So what you're saying is we have to watch a TV show now, too.
No,
I think you are. I think you want to. I think we have to invest some time eventually with all that time that we currently have available.
Sure. We'll do all of the Star Wars stuff. We'll do all of the Marvel stuff.
Why not?
Yeah.
But we'll see what Tron Ares has in store. If it's going to be a good movie for the masses, if it's really only going to be for the real fans of the movie series.
I want it to be dark
go.
sci-fi.
Dark sci-fi. Maybe the trailer suggests it could be.
I hope so.
So we'll find out. But thank you, Anurag, for emailing us. We appreciate you checking out the show and sending us that email. We hope that Tron Ares lives up to your expectations because we are excited to see it as well. If you would also like to send us an email, that address again, neverseenapod@gmail.com. You could also reach out to us on any of our social media platforms. All the links for those are in the episode descriptions. We're pretty active on there, so if you reach out, we'll see those messages as well. And of course, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast and you'd like to hear more from us, you can visit patreon.com/neverseenitpod, where for $5 a month, you can get a whole bunch of additional shows. We mentioned a few times in this episode, we watched The Hustler last year. That is over on the Wayback Machine on Patreon. And it was a fun episode. I was really surprised by that movie. So if you want to hear me lust after Paul Newman some more.
An even younger Paul Newman,
even younger, hotter Paul Newman, even though he's pretty hot, even as like 50 years old in this movie. That address again, patreon.com/neverseenitpod. But Trent, we have one more episode of Big Movie May before the 1970s edition is concluded. What will we be watching next week?
Well, Betsy, we already covered a Robert De Niro movie, so why don't we do an Al Pacino movie while we're at it? We're going to be covering Dog Day Afternoon.
This is going to be a first-time watch for both of these hosts, so you should definitely come and check that out next week. If you've made it this far, we thank you for listening. Until next week, my name is Betsy.
My name is Trent.
And we'll see you then.